Hello and welcome to today's show on Our Game. Myself, Michael Verney. Apologies, we're a couple of minutes late starting. Hands up, that was my mistake. A little technological problem, but Shane, delighted to be here back every Monday again. And it's fair to say, I know we're always donning pretty sweet Arga retro jerseys, but I think we've gone above and beyond this week. You're actually muted there, Shane. Would you believe? So you might need to go through that again.
Yeah, let myself down there. Unbelievable jersey, though. Look at this. It reminds you of the glory days. I'd say you couldn't but think of the records, and even the back of it with the numbers there as well. It's just a triumph of a jersey, and you get 15% off at orgaretro.com using the promo code OurGame.
And this is obviously the Dublin Bloody Sunday jersey as well. Absolute peach. I'm not from Dublin, but if I thought I could get away with wearing this on the night out, I probably would, I'd say. It's a lovely little top. And obviously, you can go to orgaretro.com and get all those sweet numbers. Tip Galway, Wexford, Kilkenny, Offaly, and many, many more. Use the promo code OurGame to get 15% off. Mad weekend, Shano, particularly yesterday. A mad old day.
It sure was. Shane Record Stapleton, says Richard Hogan here. Sound issues, but we fixed those. Wexford versus Dublin, says Richard as well. Look, lots of comments coming in straight away. We put up a poll there last night, or this morning, I should say, asking what should we talk about first? Should we talk about the no comment? Should we talk about the famous speech after? I mean, it's probably the most heralded Junior All Ireland club final ever. Most watched, most talked about, all because of one man. But David Clifford isn't necessarily the only man being talked about afterwards. And then the third option is, should we start off with actual GA matches, talking about them? But no, everyone wants to talk about the no comment. And we'll put up the little clip here. So it was Cork played Limerick yesterday. We know there's all this talk, like without naming names, everyone knows there's something going on with Limerick in terms of like players and stuff like that. But you asked the question after the Cork Limerick game yesterday to John Kiely, and here it is.
John, I have to ask you, there was different talk on social media and otherwise about maybe different players that weren't on their holiday and possible disciplinary reasons for that. Can you have any comment on that?
I don't.
Okay, so it was as simple as that, and you didn't think for going in for a second nibble. You kind of thought, you know what, enough done there.
Yeah, he'd kind of been asked in maybe other roundabout ways earlier on in the interview about whether there was certain players that weren't going to be available for the league or who was in contention and who wasn't. And like, listen, Shane, it's the way it is now. Lads will not volunteer information to you. If I hadn't asked about Dermot Burns and kind of known about that, he's not going to tell you about it. It's very Dublin-esque, I have to say. The information is kept very tight, even about Dermot Burns. He'll be back in a few weeks. There's never, it's even with injuries now, it's never, oh, he has a grade 3 hamstring tear and he'll be back on this date. It's, a minor issue. It's almost like wasn't there a famous one when Joe Schmidt was over the Irish rugby team? Was it like muscular soreness or something like that? You know what I mean? The information is so vague. But listen, the world and its mother has been hearing different things that were going on around the Limerick squad and whether certain players were or not on the holiday. And like, you have to ask from my point of view, if I went all the way down to Cork and didn't at least pose the question, you wouldn't be doing your job. Like, I didn't expect much of an answer, but that's the way it goes.
Yeah, so we'll go through some of the comments here and then just talk more broadly in terms of like, should teams be asked these questions? Starting off with Jack Harnett, Limerick's All-Ireland win this year will be a sweet one. Fair play to Kiely for not adding to the media, trying to cancel an amateur player. Well, we haven't dropped any, and we don't know for sure what the story is within any panels, but we haven't dropped any players from any panels. So when a player gets dropped off a panel, is that not the team cancelling the player? I don't know. So get your comments in. Adrian McGrath felt that Jack had made a silly comment there. Cassius King said, fair play yesterday, Michael. You were asking a brave question, which a lot of people would have liked to have known. River Power cancelled. Limerick squad and fans can't take any question, never mind criticism of their operation. Siege mentality. It's why the players think they can do anything. It doesn't have to be this way. Great question. Proper journalism. So there's a few, like, cancel us all you want, River. We're still 3 in a row champions. So there's plenty of other comments coming in as well. We probably won't read them all out. Kiely not addressing his team issues, going on too long on and off the pitch, to be honest. So just more broadly speaking, should we ask teams about this? And I think sometimes you have to. and like, especially if you're a top team. So in this case, Limerick, and they've had all the trappings of success. You know, like there's all the interviews, the adulation, touring the cup around, all that kind of stuff that is going to happen. But then you have a lot of players who are, I suppose, showing up at media things, who are getting paid to show up at these launches, who are, you know, being lionized, who are appearing in ads about, you know, anti-drink driving, all this kind of stuff, and aligning themselves with like positive things and like mental health and stuff like this, which we've seen in other teams as well. And, you know, with like GPA, different initiatives that they've had. And you can't just expect that you will be attached only to the positive things, and that limelight will only ever be used, and spotlight will only ever be used positively. If you get that sort of level of profile and stuff happens that you don't want to happen within the camp, unfortunately, because you have now kind of embraced the limelight to some degree, it's not always going to be positive. And once you put yourself out there and you're giving the public that little bit of ownership, you can't just decide then all of a sudden we're amateur when you don't want to be asked questions. So it's whether it's right or wrong or fair and unfair, that's just the reality of it.
Yeah, Shane, the word that always comes to me would be balance. So you like, as a journalist, you're supposed to be balanced, or even a commentator, you're supposed to be balanced. You can be hard hitting or whatever, but you have to be kind of fair. So if something, you know, good is going on, you'll report that. If something bad or negative is going on, you have to report that in the same light and try to be balanced about it. But you can't just, like, it's not, you know, it's not like public relations or something where you're just trying to put a good spin on everything or anything like that. That's not the kind of way of the world. And listen, there was probably reasons why John Kiely couldn't comment or wasn't going to comment any further on it, and would probably been glad not to comment at all. But listen, it's been the talk of the town for the last couple of weeks, so it kind of had to be addressed. And whether or not the player in question will be seen in a Limerick jersey or not this year probably remains to be seen. But as you say, well, it's like I don't know if you mentioned it there. It's like the Dubs and how great, you know, 6 in a row was. But when they were, and listen, that's not to say that other teams weren't at it, because Monaghan were another team that were caught out as well. But when the Dubs were training collectively during COVID, they are seen as role models within society or whatever. So if role models within society are breaking the rules, and I'm not saying the rules were right at the time or anything like that, but you know, there's a different expectation on you, I suppose, when you're in the public limelight like that. And you know, I think from a sporting point of view as well, people would just want to know what players are available to Limerick for the coming year, or what players we're going to be watching, or what players we're not going to be watching. So listen, it's not the last time it's going to be talked about. I'm sure it's going to play out as the season goes on, I'd imagine too.
Yeah, ML89 says, great team, but there's always something off the field going on with Limerick. Doesn't take from their team's success, but as role models, it does a bit. Taints the 90% of lads on the panel.
Can I say something about that as well, Shane? I think the fact that they have had things going on in the background, and obviously there was a player drop last year for ill discipline, and then there was the thing in New York when there was a couple of players sent home. If anything, it makes their success all the more remarkable, and it makes John Kiely's job as manager all the more extraordinary. The fact that they've had these different things going on that could completely take your eyes off the ball, could completely take your eyes off a 3 in a row last year, and pull the train off the tracks, and they've managed to keep the train on the tracks, which is, to me, it makes the success even more remarkable. That's not to say it's to be lauded or anything, because you don't want to have those type of things, but it does make the success even more extraordinary.
Yeah, John Collins says, it's fair to ask the question. Ethically, Mick has to ask the question, but equally, John Kiely has the right to say, I don't have anything to say, or I don't want to say anything, due process, etc.
Totally, yeah. 100%,
yeah. Let's see, is there any other comments here? We've asked who do we think are the young players that are really standing out this year, and we'll come to that in a little bit. We'll also be coming to talking about Limerick's performance against Cork. But I suppose, like, it's not unusual for teams and players, and sometimes it's hard to understand why exactly certain players get caught up with media attention, but it does happen. Like you mentioned, Dublin during the COVID thing, obviously at the time I said this was nonsense and they should have used their platform to say these restrictions are nonsense, but didn't. Tip in 2014 were absolutely hammered throughout the league. They stopped talking to media for a while, and it only made things worse, because all people were doing were talking negatively. Paul Galvin has had that sort of media spotlight, which hasn't been always positive. Diarmuid Connolly, Cathal Barrett, DJ Carey, Darren Gleeson, Lara Corbett, Gooch Cooper, you know, with the fundraiser and stuff like that. And then we go from No comment to big comment. So the All-Ireland Club final that Fossa won by 19 points to 113. And Paddy Fitzgerald or Paddy Clifford, whatever you want to call it. But do you know what it reminded me of? Like, so he'd obviously been massively shaken up by that elbow to the face. It was a sickening elbow, really. And, you know, there's no place for that. I would hope that that's not what that player would regularly do, and I'm going to assume that it's not. So I'm not here to do any sort of a character assassination. But I was just thinking afterwards, like, going back on it, I wonder would Paddy, you know, no more than Anthony Joshua after the Alexander Usyk fight, if he could go back, would he have kind of got on the soapbox for a little while? Or I wonder is Paddy today, like, you know, thinking, do you know what? I'm glad I said it. What would you think?
I think he was fairly rattled now when he was given the speech. And listen, Shane, I've said it to you before. I said it to anybody that talks about the media. A lot of the time, it's the best, more juiciest, most honest comment comes from a player or a manager, like just after the heat of a game has finished. And he was obviously, like, he was on the sideline, standing on the sideline along with his brother at the end of an All-Ireland final, which I can't imagine how frustrating that would have been. He almost tried not to say what he did in the speech, but he kind of couldn't help himself as well, because he thought himself anyway that he was just being honest. Now looking back at what Paddy got sent off for, like, he was far from innocent, I would say. It looked almost like a hand across the face and nearly tried to kind of push your man's face back a small bit. That could have been maybe construed as something else, even from a referee's point of view. But yeah, listen, it's a funny one, and it'll be interesting to see. I think you couldn't actually lift a cup, having been sent off up until very, very recently when the rule was changed. Maybe we maybe never know whether Larry McCarthy called him the wrong name by mistake to try and get over some. I doubt it somehow. He also made that bit of a faux pas when he handed Declan Hannon the trophy a couple of years ago, and announced that he was from a different club. I can't remember the club off the top of my hand, but it definitely wasn't Adair anyway. But I'm going to give Paddy the benefit of the doubt, because I think he was seriously rattled, and there's a fair chance he probably has a bit of a concussion after what was just an awful, I wouldn't call it a tackle, I don't know what I call it, but it was a bit of a mad one. And it just, I kind of expected, I didn't get to see the speech live, I kind of expected when I look back on it that I would hear a bit of laughter or something from the crowd, but it was kind of like a tumbleweed kind of job, and it made it even more kind of awkward. And once he dug the hole for himself, he kind of dug it a little bit more as well. It was highly dramatic, I have to say.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to be too critical of Paddy Clifford here, Paddy Fitzgerald. I don't want to be too critical of the referees either, because they have a tough job. And yeah, like, his hand went where it shouldn't have. I'm not saying that he went for the gouge or whatever, which has been suggested by some people. But it was probably, you know, he was playing with fire a little bit there. But the type of person I am, would I do something like, I wouldn't put it beyond me, for example, to do something like what he did when you've got that soapbox in front of you. So I don't want to be too hard on him, because imagine how bitterly disappointing it is at the end of the game to be given the red card. Yeah,
I would hazard a good guess and say that you probably would have had a bit of a spake about it. I've no doubt in my mind that you definitely would have had. I don't think it takes much of the gloss off for either of the Cliffords, but it's not something you'd like. You wouldn't like. I remember I got sent off in an under-21 final for Burr in the wrong. I will still say it to this day, and it totally, I had to stand for the last 15 or 20 minutes on the sideline, and it totally took away.
Did you win that?
Yeah, we won it after, yeah, but it totally took away, the meaning of that title for me anyway, without a doubt. I don't know if the Cliffords are the same. David's was a bit different. I think he took one for the team, I'd say, with that yellow card, and he said as much after. But Paddy obviously felt a bit hard done by.
Yeah. Like six red cards in a final must be right up there, in terms of a record. And there was also the black card in the game as well. And like David Clifford was saying afterwards, it wasn't really that dirty a game or whatever, but the end was a bit of a farce. And to me now, the real strangeness of it was when that elbow went into Paddy Clifford's head, Stewartstown were only 3 points behind. The final was still there, and then it was just a total lack of composure. And any chance that Stewartstown had of pulling it back, they just threw it into the wind.
Yeah, they didn't manage the game at all, should we say, and they let it run away. And once those things happened, and seeing one of one of the Stewartstown lads coming over to Paddy Clifford trying to pull him up off the ground as well after the belt he got to the head was, ridiculous. Like, I don't know whether he didn't see the incident or whatever. That just added to the madness as well. But they definitely lost their heads when they were needed most, and they were in a good position at halftime, in a very, very good position at halftime. And it's funny, I just saw Clifford there as well. I don't know if it's a case where whether he's that media savvy or whether he's just that used to treatment of that kind of level since he was probably 15 or 16 that literally it's water off a duck's back. He reacted once, wasn't he sent off in a league game a year or two ago? Am I wrong in saying that? I think he was.
I remember David was sent off against Tyrone very harshly.
David, yeah. It was, a bit of a reaction. I thought it was very harsh, but like for a young guy that gets treated probably harsher than most players, and if he was 5'11", he'd probably get looked after even better by referees. But because he's so big, he's expected nearly to take it. It's almost like a subconscious thing within the GA. But he just wouldn't give anyone any fuel or say, listen, this was happening to me or that was happening to me. He just kind of gets on with it. And let's just talk about his display on the pitch for a minute as well. Like 8 points from play in an All-Ireland final, be it junior or any other level, is unbelievable. Like 11 points, 8 from play. Like, that's fantasy stuff. And he just seems to make that fantasy kind of football stuff, that just seems to be reality for him nearly every Saturday or Sunday when he goes out. And it's phenomenal what he's done over the course of a year. And I'll ask you as well, Shane, like, it is, and I said it before, but I think we need to have a bit more of a meaningful debate about it. Is his season, and I'm not going to say it's a 2022 or 2023, it's the GA season from start to finish, is that the best assembled season of all time?
Well, you've got the thread there because Grode Hegarty had tweeted about it, so you might bring it up on screen there when you get a second. But it has been absolutely outrageous, the things that he's won. I mean, what has he won? League, Munster, All-Ireland with Kerry, Senior County Championship with East Kerry, All-Ireland Junior with Fossa after obviously winning the county and the Munster as well. Man of the match in the league final, unbelievable in the All-Ireland final with Kerry, Footballer of the Year. So, I mean, where does it end with him?
Yeah, it's unbelievable. I think I have it here now, Shane. I'm just going to bring it up. Yeah, have it here, yeah. So it's phenomenal. Grode Hegarty tweeted, and I always like to see... it's actually not coming up with them. Here we are. This is obviously former Footballer of the Year talking. I'm watching the game probably from home or that. And he just said, has there ever been a greater GA individual season than David Clifford's 2022? League, Munster and All-Ireland with Kerry, Senior County Championship with East Kerry, All-Ireland Junior with Fossa, plus man of the match in League final, All-Ireland final with Kerry and Fossa. Throwing a Footballer of the Year for top measure. And he just goes on to say, the Sigerson final being the only competition he played in, he didn't win. Outrageous stuff. Been a long season for himself and Paddy, so hopefully they get a long period of rest. Fran Mallon replies, and I'd like to get your take on this. So he talks about Conor Callaghan's 2017. He says, All-Ireland Club Senior Hurling Championship, under-21 Leinster Football, under-21 All-Ireland Football, Leinster Senior Football Championship, All-Ireland Senior Football Championship, All-Star, Young Footballer of the Year, Dublin Club Senior Hurling Championship, Leinster Club Senior Hurling Championship. And as Fran says, he was 21 in the middle of all that. I'll just give one more. There was one more. So a couple of other lads came in for Con's 2017 season. Donnacha O'Leary just said TJ's 2015. That was very memorable too. There was another good one here. Stephen O'Brien Nemo in 1989. This is Usheen Keller. Won Senior National League, Munster and All-Ireland. Captain and under-21 Munster and All-Ireland. Also Senior Club County Munster and All-Ireland. Being only 19 until the 28th of December. I'm sure he would have won Young Player of the Year if that was around back then too. And there was one more. I think it goes back to, I think there was one on Nicky Rackard. Nicky Rackard, 1956. All-Ireland, this is from Christina White. All-Ireland Senior Hurling, Leinster Senior, National Hurling League, Railway Cup, Walsh Cup, Oireachtas Cup, 30 goals and 50 points, 34 years of age. It's just like, it is unbelievable. Like, I'm really interested in your take on comparing Clifford's year and Con's year in particular, because you were obviously front and center for that.
Yeah, I mean, I would give it to Con, number one, because of his age, but number two, because he did it across two codes. And I think that's unbelievably difficult to jump from one to the other. And like, so you're playing club football, club hurling. And I know that Clifford was playing with Fossa and East Kerry, But to jump from the standard that he produced in hurling and then across to Gaelic football, and like the hurling would actually have been getting in the way of the football because he would have been missing some of the league and the preparation for Dublin that year. So that's why I'd give him the edge. But, you know, call me biased if you want, but that's where I'm coming from.
I think the switching codes makes it even more remarkable because it's one thing focusing on the same thing over and over and over again. In every training session, you're focusing on the big ball or whatever. But when you're switching the two, and you have to say, Con's form with Kula was like, I remember Tommy Walsh saying that he thought Con was the best hurler in the country at one stage. And that was been solely based on a club campaign. So he was basically saying that Con O'Callaghan was the best hurler in the country at a given time, despite the fact that he had never played senior inter-county. That was the level he was at. There was double markers. He was just literally every time he got the ball, you thought he was going to score a goal. So I don't know. I find it hard to call. I definitely wouldn't be dumbing down Con's 2017. And you know, I remember, I don't know, was it that year or the year after? He won a Sigerson with UCD as well, and made an All-Ireland club campaign with yourselves. I think they were awaiting an All-Ireland semi-final. I think switching the codes is probably just actually tips the balance in favour of Con, I'd have to say.
So we're giving it to Con, okay, because I thought recency bias might be a real issue here. But and do the viewers agree? So get your comments in, let us know. We'll read out a few of them as we're going along here. Shall we move on from that section on to the next bit?
Yeah, 100%, Jeff. Fire away.
So Stephen O'Keefe isn't going to be coming back for Waterford. Do we see that as a massive blow? There are good goalkeepers there, Billy Nolan, Sean O'Brien, etc. in Waterford. But, you know, he's arguably the most complete goalie out there.
Yeah, I think it's a lot. It's obviously a loss not to get him back. And I'd say Davey kind of tried to move mountains in order to get him back. But his mind was obviously made up. I got the feeling from talking to him that his mind was kind of veering towards thinking about it more or contemplating it a bit more. Listen, to me, he's probably the second or third best keeper in the country. Owen Murphy thinks he's the best keeper in the country. Having him and having his experience, you know, in being in control of the ball 30 or 40 times per game and knowing that you have such a safe pair of hands and probably the best shot stopper. Say him and Murphy are even a little bit ahead of Nicky Quaid in terms of shot stopping. But it is a loss. But the only thing is, Sean O'Brien has got time last year. They've had time, I suppose, in the last couple of years without O'Keefe there. So it's not as if it's a bombshell where somebody is leaving a squad and leaves a big gaping hole. The hole has had to be filled in the last couple of years. To be fair, it's been filled quite well. I think O'Keefe, one of the key things with O'Keefe though is, like, remember last year when Waterford played Tipperary in the first round of Munster and they just could not get their hands on a ball from a puck out, in particular like a long puck out. I think Stephen O'Keefe would maybe have that little bit more nous to find a way around that or to work something else. But whereas the other two guys are obviously carrying a lot less experience. But yeah, it's a pity from a hurling point of view that he's not going to be involved. What do you think?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's just that experience and even leadership. Billy Nolan, you know, he's good, very good player, playing centre back for his club and also for WIT. Sean O'Brien has been really, really good, but neither of them have the same level of, I suppose, experience at the big stage, at huge games at Croker Park and so on. We'll just go back into some of the comments about Con versus Clifford and, you know, anyone else in between. Chad Fitz was another one that we were going to mention. Come back to that in a second. Richard Hogan says the fact that it being a dual code is incredible, although mixing it between both codes might have kept it fresh for him. I remember actually during that run, there was a time we were out in Abbottstown training, and you would, for whatever reason, Jason Sherlock was there, presumably with the Dublin setup at the time. So he was over chatting with Con at one stage. So even in between a session or around the session, you had football chat going on while he's also focusing on hurling. So, you know, that's plenty for a young guy.
Yeah, you could say, Shane, it might have kept him fresh, but how, like, you know, if you didn't play hurling for 3 or 4 months or you weren't playing every week, you know those balls that kind of are around your feet and you just can't move your feet quick enough and you just don't have the nous to get the ball into your hand. Like, Con was literally just, it was sticking despite the fact that he wasn't playing hurling every day of the week. So I think you can say it might have kept him fresh, but his hurling like never dipped in any way, or his football never dipped when he was focusing on hurling. It was remarkable, really.
To win in 2 codes is better. I'd have to go with Con season, says River Power. SSRI says, hi Shane, is that a 50s Wexford jersey or is it a 60s one? I'm not actually entirely sure, but I'd say some of the eagle-eyed Wexford folk out there would know. So let us know.
Could straddle the boat, I'd say. Could just about straddle the boat.
A Sully 180, yeah, the transition between the two codes has to just swing it in Con's favour. James S. O'Keefe, a strange one. Hard to think of another top intercounty level player opting out when at his peak, but there has to be plenty of top class intercounty players who have opted out. Philip Mahoney, and this obviously it's not just a Waterford thing, but Philip Mahoney, what's his name as well, from Tipperary, that I'd love to see playing the killer one, Jerome Cahill.
Yeah,
yeah.
That's Jerome Cahill's probably a bit different in the sense that you think he has like 7, 8, 9, 10 years potentially with Tipperary if he went in there and stayed in there. But like O'Keefe was at his top probably when he left. I would say. Remember the double save in the All Ireland final? How they didn't concede a goal in that All Ireland final against Limerick in 2020 is unbelievable. And then a couple of weeks later, he's taken a year out, and then a year later he's retired. Off the top, you kind of caught me there. Off the top of my head, I can't think of too many lads that left. Like you could say, JJ left not at his peak, but he was at nearly his best. But he was of an age where like JJ was definitely 32 or 33. Like, and it's like you're kind of maybe sensing that the standards are going to drop. Whereas with Stephen O'Keefe, I would have hazarded a guess to say that if Stephen O'Keefe had stayed involved with Waterford at the end of 2022, going into 2021, he probably would have had at least another 5 seasons. At least
Lee Keegan had another season in him.
Yeah, now I think O'Keefe is different. I think O'Keefe has another 3 to 4 seasons at least. Whereas some lads, and probably rightly from their point of view, this almost smell that maybe they're not recovering as quicker. Maybe now is a good time to go. I saw Andy Moore talking there saying that if James Horn had stayed on, that he's like he thinks Lee Keegan would have definitely stayed on. It was like a new regime. It was like a chance to go out in between managers, if you get me, in between kind of regimes or 3-year blocks. So yeah, listen, O'Keefe is going to be a big loss, but listen, they've ploughed on the last couple of years, and no doubt they'll plough on again.
Yeah, for sure. A very good comment here. Chad Fitzpatrick's 2006 season 2. Dahi Burke's 2017-18 with Galway and Corofin. Also 2 codes. Very good comment there. I like that one a lot. Lots of comments about who the best goalkeeper in the country is. O'Keefe would have been a very big gain, but he's not a loss because he wasn't there. The manager going public with it undermines the other keepers, surely.
The thing about that is, like, it's like anything. The manager is asked the question and he comments on it. Do you know what I mean? It's not like he brings it up himself, like, and is trying to gain headlines of it. But that's the headline from that game over the weekend, the Waterford-Clare game. That's just natural because it's a newsy kind of a thing in a Munster League game that Stephen O'Keefe won't be back. But I don't think it's, if you actually look at Davies' quotes, he talks about it would have been great to have Stephen O'Keefe here, and then he talks about how good the other 2 lads are. So I don't think he's trying to undermine, or I don't think he does undermine the 2 lads that are left there.
Flash says, speaking on Clifford, how do Kerry manage him now? Surely they'll rest him. He's played about 13 months of straight football. Would it be out of question to sit him for the majority of the league? They're going to coast through Munster. Look, maybe Cork will come this year. You'd expect they'll come at some stage, but they don't need to bring him back until, I would say, the last round of the league or almost starting into Munster, because he's played so much football. Why not give him at a minimum 2 months off? Let him completely recharge the battery. Yeah, do a little bit of running to keep ticking over. And even if he comes back towards the end of the league, he's probably got 2 months of full training to get back to the top level. I don't think he needs to play much of this league at all.
It's a tricky one. We talked about this last week because I kind of thought it was something that was going to come up, and at least his season now has finished without an injury or anything like that. He said he was, he's getting very tired towards the end of the game yesterday. But like he basically talked about, take 2 weeks off and be back in 3 or 4. So there's an element of.
I just think he didn't want to commit to saying a big, long length of time. I just think he publicly didn't want to say anything like that. And maybe privately he would like a little bit longer.
Potentially, yeah. He's of the age where he probably wouldn't want it. Maybe he mightn't want to take that much of a break. And he's obviously playing so well and wants to win more. But I think you have to see the bigger picture with him. There's a potential for his 2023 to go as long. It would take maybe a couple of results, and they'll obviously have to win a Kerry intermediate along the way as well. But there's potential for his next 12 months to go as long as the previous 12. So I think you kind of need to take the decision out of his hands almost. And if it was me now and I was manager, I probably wouldn't let him near the place until the middle of February or something like that, and give him a good month. Then maybe get him doing a week or two kind of pre-season stuff, prehab and different things, and then get him back in. And I'd say 7 rounds of the league, he might start featuring off the bench maybe round 5, 6, and might start maybe the last game of the league, something like that. But listen, I'm not Jack O'Connor. I haven't managed a team to win All Irelands in 3 different reigns, so it will be interesting to see how he looks after him.
Yeah, but I wouldn't back against you doing it either.
Thanks very much. I appreciate it.
We might have to go outside awfully. James S says, years ago, Kerry would give some older lads the year off. With last year in mind, maybe give Clifford the league off. Munster handy to win anyway. No Sigerson this year, Richard. Stewartstown discipline started it all off. Let us know out there, who do you think has been the young player to really stand out in the first couple of weeks of the year? Like, is there any player that you're thinking, wow, I think we can expect big things? Now, we're going to start talking about the Munster Hurling League and all the hurling and the football, but let us know what players have really sparkled for you. Now, one that really just caught my eye the other day was Diarmuid O'Dooling. So he's a young man. I think he's still in his leaving cert. He's from Racool Commercials, had a great run with them in Leinster last year after winning was it intermediate or junior A title in Dublin, whichever it was. Just when he came on the other day, like the first couple of balls, 3 balls went to him, and every time you were on the edge of the seat because he just turned and went at his man. And I do like really stylish looking left-hander. We'll see how much game time he gets this year, but he's a player that I thought straight off the bat you could see this lad can hurl. What do you think? Anyone really standing out for you so far?
There's another O'Dooling that could make a mark for Limerick, I'd say.
The Monaleen lad.
Yeah, like I thought he was outstanding. And I thought
so he's O'Doolig. This lad is O'Dooling.
Okay. So O'Doolig. So that could be Dooley Osquaig, is it? It must be. But he just looked like in the interview after, just a real kind of genuine kind of looking young fella, and he was an absolute killer the other night when Toreen were really giving him lots of it, and big questions were asked when the ball went in around him. And it's not as if the cornerback was standing off him or anything like that. Far from it. He was very tight to him, but he was just able to make a yard or two, got some great scores, ended up with 5. Marco Dwyer was brilliant. It'd be interesting to see whether those 2 lads, like, even if they're in with Limerick now, it's probably a big departure to say that they would be able to make an impact with Limerick this year. Like, when are they going to play? Do you know what I mean? I don't see when exactly they're going to play. They would definitely be 2. I was really impressed with Fergal O'Connor, cornerback for Limerick yesterday in the Munster League. Thought he was taking off about 10 to go. I don't know if that was tiredness or whether he had a knock or whatever, but he was just really, really tidy. Got in. He was brilliant on the ball. That was the one thing I noticed about a lot of the Limerick newcomers yesterday. While there were a lot of newcomers, they were all generally trying to do the right thing with the ball. Aidan O'Connor showed a couple of glimpses, got 2 great scores. Shane O'Brien and Rob Downey had a fair old tussle at the edge of the square. And a lot of the ball that came in maybe was in O'Brien's favour. He ended up with 2 points, but then a right good ding-dong of a battle. He's another player that could potentially make a bit of an impact. Billy Drennan from Kilkenny is probably another one too. Now, I think that will take a bit of time, but he's been given plenty of exposure, and he was one of their best players against Laois yesterday.
Yeah, what about Rory Canavan? Will we see him with the seniors this year? Ethan Doherty, Cormac Egan, of course, your own county. With Offaly. So it's O'Dowlig, which is Daly, isn't it? That would be the man. Yeah. And so it's O'Dooling, which I presume is Dooley in the other side of it. So keep your comments coming in. Adam Hogan and Cian Galvin for Clare. Yeah, absolutely. Let me just see anyone else being commented on here. No, just Shane O'Brien, Kilmallock, some man. Don't ask me why, but I think there could be an opening for him inside for Limerick this year. Obviously a little bit tongue-in-cheek there. But, actually, the first 3 or 4 balls went into him. They didn't stick. And I actually didn't think he chased Rob Downey as hard as he could with those first couple of balls. And I was like, this won't go down great with management. But from then on, he looked excellent.
Yeah, I thought he really turned it around. He looked like Rob Downey walked out with a couple of balls, particularly the first couple of balls. And we'll talk about Cork and Limerick in a bit. To me, that was like Brian Hayes got 2 points and obviously got the match winner, and Cormac Bosan got 2 points in the first half as well. But to me, it was a lot of the new faces stood out with Limerick, and it was a lot of the familiar faces I thought stood out with Cork. Obviously, Conor Lahan, I thought Rob Downey had a good game as well. Kieran Joyce was pretty solid at centre-back. But yeah, I think from a Limerick point of view, that would be the most heartening thing, that it was the new faces that stood out. But the thing is, when you're talking about like new faces or ones to watch in 2023, you're probably a lot more. It's probably a lot more realistic to pick a county that's not going to be in an All-Ireland final. Maybe, do you know what I mean? How are you going to get into the Limerick team? How are you going to get game time? It's going to be very, very difficult. So I think Ross Banville was mentioned there.
I was going to say,
yeah, from a Wexford point of view. Timmy Clifford, maybe from a Kilkenny point of view. There might be a few more options there. Garrod Dunn, yeah. Like Garrod Dunn was inside for Tullaroan in the Kilkenny Championship this year. And like he's obviously under 20 again this year. But he's a player on a lot of people's lips in Kilkenny. And one that people are really looking forward to. Probably maybe I'd even go down a small bit like Dublin. There's probably going to be more openings with Dublin.
Oh yeah,
yeah, and a Wexford.
We've been corrected by the way. Dowling. Yeah, that makes more sense, doesn't it?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Listen. I thought it was half decent Irish. I'm actually not too bad, but my second names and stuff wouldn't be great.
Yeah. So yeah, and you know what? There was plenty of lads who played well for Dublin the other night. Like Paddy Doyle, he was really good. He's from Naomh Barogue. Excellent performance. And Mark Grogan, who's not all that young, but it's just he hasn't featured for Dublin previously that I can recall. I thought he was really good before he went off injured. So let's talk a little bit more about Limerick and Cork the other night. So like you said, Conor Lehane, he's the one who did an awful lot of scoring. He was out centre forward. Brian Hayes looked okay inside as well. He got 2 points. Obviously, huge man. Is there anyone else that you thought, oh wow, there's some like Kieran Joyce? He's very cool on the ball, isn't he, when he comes out? And he does well in terms of like getting his arm in under an opposing player's hurley to win that sort of free as well. But who else stood out for you for Cork?
Well, Kieran Joyce, I'm a big fan of Kieran Joyce's, but there's times you think he's been a bit too cool on the ball. When you think he's going to get hooked or you think he's going to get blocked. Did you see the goal, Shane? I was there and I watched it about 10 times after. But my initial reaction to it was Oisin O'Reilly got the tiniest of touches. Now, I mean to say top of the like
fingertips,
top of even a fingernail job that looked to me to have changed the direction on it. Now, Fintan O'Toole was there from the 42 and Paul Dollery was there of the Sun, and they were adamant that I hadn't taken a touch. But I don't know. I trust my eyes, even though they're not the best. I'd still trust them in that scenario. O'Reilly probably be a bit disappointed with his performance in general, though, because it was a chance to stake a claim, and he was quiet enough. Was actually taken off with 10 minutes to go. From a Cork point of view,
he didn't really get into it either, did he?
Not really. Got a score in the second half, but Limerick were totally reliant on David Reedy's frees. Really, they were one down at the break. Hit 7 of the next 9 points. I think 6 of them were frees from David Reedy, who missed a free actually underneath the stand at the end. And they had a couple of bad wides. Tom Morrissey had 2 bad wides in the closing spell. Conor O'Grady, who came on and got a point, missed one as well. Shane O'Brien had a kind of a bad wide as well. But from a Cork point of view, we were asking there about players that kind of stood out. Yeah, you know, a lot of it is kind of what I said to you. Rob Downey, Conor Lehane up front. Bosang had glimpses. Brian Hayes had a couple of glimpses, had 2 goal chances denied, one by a save by David McCarthy, who was getting a chance in the Limerick goal, and the other was a hook by Fergal O'Connor. Shane Barrett, quiet enough. Conor Callahan was taken off. Luke Meade was taken off. Tommy O'Connell, midfield, was taken off. Brian O'Sullivan went off as well. You know, there wouldn't have been... that's what I suppose they won the game, which is heartening enough. But Sean O'Donoghue, I thought, had a very good game at cornerback as well as captain too, and was kind of bullying a few lads in there as well. But there's a lot of it is the same names that will be coming back to Cork, which to me, I don't know if it's worrying at this time of the year, but by all accounts, they have a lot of training under their belt, and probably scraped over the line against a Limerick team that only had 3 starters from the All-Ireland last year. And
I came away from the game feeling, again, unsure that Rob Downey should be at number 3. Now, I'm not saying that there isn't a place for him somewhere in the game, or somewhere in the team, but I don't think that's the position for him. So who's in the full back line for Cork? Asked Conor Heaney. So it was Conor O'Callaghan, Sean O'Donoghue was the other cornerback, and Rob Downey, he was full back. I thought the other lads did fine. I thought Conor O'Callaghan did fine. Thought Sean Donoghue did well. Buried a lad at one stage, I remember in particular. You know, he's just really good physical player. But I'm just not sure that the balance is all that right. Tommy O'Connell, I wonder, is he more of a halfback than a midfielder? But then again, I probably haven't seen him just enough to be able to make that sort of call. And of course, Pat Ryan has endeared himself to you straight away, hasn't he?
Pat Ryan says, I might just introduce myself to him because I don't think I've ever been involved in an interview before. And he said he remembered me playing cornerback, which is high praise because nobody ever remembers the cornerback. But I remember playing Sarsfields in a challenge game years ago. We were Offaly champions, they were Cork champions, and I must have been late 30s. And he just controlled things between the 265s. Just such a smart player. He's some interesting comments, Shane, actually, just on he hasn't been involved with the Cork seniors since 2017, 2018 under Kieran Kingston. And he was just talking about how physicality has increased even more. And he was even talking about Limerick's physicality yesterday. Just fly through the comments really, really quickly because I thought it was interesting. He also bemoaned their concession of frees. Cork's been nearly 4 times more than Limerick. And a bit tongue-in-cheek, he said, which is amazing for a Cork team to be giving away more frees than the opposition, because he's basically implying that a lot of people, maybe including us, say that they're not physical enough and maybe don't put in enough tackles. But he just talked about Limerick's physicality and even getting the win. He just said, anytime you put on the Cork jersey, you're expected to perform. You could see with Limerick that they had a lot of changes, and that's the kind of level they're at. All of their fellas performed. You could see the high level of effort they were putting in and the tackling and physicality that they brought to it. When you think of the fellas they were missing, you can imagine the physicality that they'll bring. It's my first time being up close to it again in 5 or 6 years, and you could see that the physicality has gone up another notch since I was involved in 2017, 2018. We're kind of watching games, Shane, as well, from the Eagle's Nest or the Crow's Nest or whatever they call it. And it's high up and you can see a lot from a tactical point of view. But even I went down to pitch side in that O'Byrne Cup match between Meath and Laois the week before last. And like, it's only when you're down on pitch level that you can actually hear the hits and you can literally see the steam flying off, lads. Like hurling of football at county level, let alone like club level has gone high, but at county level, it would blow you away. And if you can't survive physically, you just won't survive, probably, no matter how skillful you are.
Yeah, Limerick certainly dug very deep into their panel, didn't they? I mean, there was a few first teamers, lads we would have seen in the last couple of years, and like even I just looked through the team here. Richie English, obviously, he's played.
He was brilliant, Shane, as well. He was absolutely brilliant, and he was brilliant at this stage of the year last year, and hardly got a sniff of game time, but he was outstanding.
Yeah, and we've seen Aaron Costello plenty, maybe not enough in big games as for his liking, but like at 3 you've Richie English, 6 you've Dan Morrissey, Darragh O'Donovan, who was probably lucky to get away with a swing back during the first half, even though he'd taken a fair dunt himself. He was midfield. Robbie Hanley's a big man beside him as well. David Reedy at centre forward, and then the full forward line, Barry Murphy and Oisin O'Reilly. They have a bit of experience, even if they haven't featured hugely in the last couple of years. So yeah, it was. But like, there was an awful lot of players that you probably won't see that much this year. 1 or 2 of these young, sparkling talents may. But would you be somewhat worried if you were Cork that you only won by that amount in your home ground against such an experimental Limerick team?
That was probably one of my main takeaways from it, Shane, I have to say, because if you look down to the Cork team, Patrick Collins, Rob Downey, Sean O'Donoghue, Kieran Joyce, all playing in their kind of natural positions. Half forward line, Conor Lahan, centre forward, Conor Cahalane and Luke Mead either side. There's a fair chance that could be the starting half forward line in Championship. Inside, Cormac Bosang, Brian Hayes, Shane Barrett. Shane Barrett would have obviously started plenty of Championship games last year. Like, there's the nucleus of a good team there, whereas you say with Limerick, David McCarthy was, a newcomer in goals. Richie English down the middle, Dan Morrissey, Darragh O'Donovan, and the Tom Morrissey on the wing. But most of the rest of them are guys that were coming in off the bench at different stages, or guys maybe that had been on the extended panel and hadn't got game time. So that was, to me, that's a small bit worrying. A small bit worrying from a Cork point of view. But listen, that's the first of a trilogy of games. They play in the league on the 4th of February down in Páirc Uí Chaoimh, and they play then in Munster Championship as well. I have to say, there was 4,500 there in Páirc Uí Chaoimh. Yeah, like the appetite there for it is absolutely huge. It was like a summer's day. I got the train down. It was Baltic in Dublin. It was lovely in Cork. Absolutely gorgeous. It was glorious down there, I have to say. And the pitch was kind of cut up a bit for this time of the year, but in general, the conditions were really good for this time of the year. Did
you find that it was more Cork or more Limerick people there?
You're kind of clouded your view a bit from the press box or whatever, but there was definitely a decent cohort of Limerick. I'd say probably about 1,500 Limerick, maybe 1,500 to 2,000. Probably Cork just edged it. But I like Park Arena as a venue, and I was only thinking the last time I was there was when Borris-Lee won the Munster. There's something quite intimate about it or whatever. I don't know. I just like it as a venue, and I think there's always a good atmosphere down there.
Yeah, the only thing we lacked that day was having a few candles set up in front of us as well to keep the intimacy going. Pa OK is one of a few people to drive the boot into me there. And that sums up Tip Verney. Physically not up to it. Skill level won't be enough. And Conor Heaney, yeah, I'd be fierce worried winning the game on the 16th of January. Good man, Shane. You know what I mean, though. You obviously.
Yeah. The thing about this time of the year is, like, and that's probably why you can't talk too much about the games, because you don't know what you're seeing really, and you don't know who did what the day before, or you know what I mean. So it's difficult enough, but I suppose a lot of it is you're just trying to see what potentially are new players from the big sides that you might see at some stage. And like the likes of, would say, Fergal O'Connor, Aidan O'Connor, Shane O'Brien, like I'm not saying that they're going to start championship ratting, but like a lad coming on with 5 minutes to go when the game is in the melting pot, you might get one touch, and it's whether you're able to do like maybe what Cathal O'Neill was able to do when he got those chances last year. That's how big that last 10 minutes is. And I thought Limerick yesterday, Limerick didn't score. They scored twice in the last 23 minutes yesterday, having got themselves in a winning position. And in fairness, a lot of that was probably to do with panel depth. Limerick named 22. I think they used nearly everybody. They used everybody apart from Nicky Quaid. Cork named 26. But like they were able to bring in, he didn't do much on the day, but they were able to bring in Patrick Horgan, they were able to bring in Decky Dalton, they were able to bring in Owen Downey, Sam Quirk, who came on and had to be taken back off again, and Colin Walsh. Like Cork had a better squad on show, and that was probably just what tipped the balance at the end. Yeah,
so Clare 124, Waterford 219, all of which means that Tipperary advanced to the final, which is what everyone wants to see, really, isn't it?
It's funny, Shane. I'm going to call your bluff here, and I'm going to make sure everybody knows. Until we researched for this show, you didn't even know Tipperary were qualified for the Munster League final after the weekend.
Lies, and more lies. See, you're trying to drive a wedge among Tipperary people, but look, we're not having it. We've been looking for... No, do you know what? That aside, I think it's great for Tipperary to have another competitive outing, insofar as it's competitive. But, and it required, because Tipperary had lost to Waterford, it required, after Tipperary beat Clare had to win, but not by too much for Tipperary to get through it. So it's just kind of by dint of that. I think it's great for Liam Cahill that he'll have another outing. But Clare scored 117 in the second half, having only scored 7 points in the first half. That is some turnaround. And you know what? Maybe it's something to do with the conditions. Like both Galway and Dublin really struggled against the wind and up that slight hill in Parnell Park. Dublin didn't score from play in the second half, and I think Galway might have scored 2 points from play in the first half. So that'll tell you, whereas it was plenty of scoring going the other way. But that's good for Clare, because they have a lot of new up-and-coming players coming, and I think they're one of the most exciting sets of young forwards in the game.
They definitely do. Yes, we haven't seen Shane Meehan yet, I don't think, after a kind of a long club run. But Mark Rogers, you're just hoping he'll get a clean run. The thing about some of the Clare lads is, and this might sound a bit mad, but are they nearly too fast? Do you know what I mean? As in, they're more susceptible to maybe picking up hamstring injuries or whatever, which I think both had last year. But they're hugely exciting if they can stay fit. Throw Peter Duggan, Shane Meehan, Mark Rogers, Tony Kelly, Shane O'Donnell, potentially like Cottle Malone, a couple of other, like David Fitzgerald. That is hugely exciting. And Adrian McGrath's going to come in now and say, and you still think they're going to be fifth in Munster? But that view might change after the league or coming before Munster, because you have to view what you've seen before that. But definitely a very, very exciting forward line.
Yeah, and I'm just looking at the Waterford team that played as well. So Sean O'Brien, Cardiff Daly, Irla Daly, Conor Ryan, Jack Fagan, PJ Fanning, Shane McNulty, Paddy Levy, apparently very good again, Darragh Lyons, Aaron Ryan from 4 Mile Water. Then you also had Michael Kiely playing. He seemed to be the furthest man to goal. And I'm just double check what he scored. Scored 1-3, and at times he seemed to be up there on his own. Let us know what you think of that. But he's looking like he's primed for a very, very good season. You also had Patrick Kern, Kevin Mahoney, number 20, Stephen Bennett, he started, and Padraig Fitzgerald as well. I think that's someone we haven't mentioned in terms of like young players that could really take over this year or do really well. Patrick Fitzgerald and Padraig Fitzgerald, both of Waterford. Pick your three to get out of Munster, lads. We've kind of done that already, haven't we?
Yeah, I think we have. Yeah, mine is Limerick, Was it Limerick, Cork, Waterford? Waterford not having home advantage is not ideal, to say the least. But you kind of have to judge it on, like, not being smart. It's all grand saying that now, but if there's a big injury along the way or whatever, your viewpoint changes, or teams' form is stink throughout the league, and you're just thinking, will they be able to turn kind of things around or whatever? But that's my tree at the moment, anyway.
Yeah, I'm very torn on this one. Obviously Limerick, obviously Tipperary, and then one of the other three. At the moment, I'm starting to think Waterford, but I'm not even fully convinced on that, because like their league performances last year and their championship performances a couple of years before, you're like, they can't have gone back that much, and then maybe they'll get a bounce this year as well, and they would hope that one or two lads will kick on this year, that injuries won't be as big a problem. So yeah, I'm starting to think Waterford at the moment. But I still think Cork have the players to win in All-Ireland, but I'm not convinced they will, because there was still some of the facets of play that frustrated me from last year. Stick passing in tight areas in the middle where all the traffic were. I mean, you just have to hand pass through those areas if you're going to work it through there, rather than trying to stick pass. It's just not possible to do it.
Yeah, I thought they forced the pass a little bit too much at different stages as well, and a couple of Limerick scores were just from Cork mistakes. I thought it was interesting as well. There's definitely Limerick are very smart in what they do. Like, I think for 3/4 of the Cork puckouts, they just let them have them. They just let them have the sharp puckout. Like, I actually think it's fascinating when you're going to be meeting a team again and again and again. You can box kind of clever enough. So if Cork are allowed to have every puck out, you go and play them in the league, and they might let them do that in the league as well. Then you play them in championship, and they push right up, and Cork have to win ball, and are dealt with a completely different task. Do you know what I mean? You can kind of do that now, and it's like conceding puckouts. Like, imagine we were talking about conceding puckouts 5 years ago. We wouldn't have dreamed of it. But it's something you can almost like lull a team into thinking maybe you're going to do one thing, or not allowing them to work on their long puckouts. So I noticed even a couple of times yesterday, Patrick Collins actually did go long, even when the short one was on. If I was the manager, I'd be actually saying, listen, they're kind of sucking us in here. We need to go along. We need to see whether we're able to win a puck out or whatever. The last thing I say about Cork and Limerick, I've seen him before, and I've taught it then, but he was probably starved of possession in the second half yesterday. But Cormac Boateng has a fair hand on him he's not particularly big, but Beestons has a fair hand on him.
He sure does. Waterford won last year's league and were stink thereafter. So Sully 180, who's from Burr, and you, who are from Burr, have both said stink. And yeah, I would have been rared on that as well, hearing that someone's form was stink. I have always loved that one. Is there one to rival saying stink?
Oh, no, I like that one. I have to say. Cat is kind of a catch-all kind of a job. You know what I mean? What was the other one? I had one in my head. It's gone now. But yeah, I love. There's a lot of parochial type sayings like that you maybe wouldn't hear in other places. Like you always say to me, "Oh, you're some bagel," as you'd say, because I always say that bagel. You'd hear it in Offaly and you'd hear it in Wexford, but you'd hear it in very few other places.
Yeah, Adrian McGrath says Lohan used 11 substitutes yesterday, including a bunch of kids. So that's an indication of how hard he was chasing the big win. Tip have never won in All-Ireland in a year ending with a 3. Cork are in the gutter. Cork almost full team, barely got over a third string Limerick outfit. Don't forget Ryan Taylor, Vernie, might squeeze us up to 4th.
Maybe
Wexford
so.
Dark Horses, lads. Highly clued in coach, would expect to see them in the semi-final. Milligan? Malogin.
Cat Malogin.
Yeah. Davey will love Waterford not having a home game. Add to the siege mentality. Think they'll get out of Munster. Putrid, yeah. Muck, yeah.
Yeah, I like them all now. We'll have to try and wangle them all into sentences before the end of the show. I actually wouldn't mind doing a quick little quiz, Shano, for the viewers, because I have a few questions in my back pocket. I'm just going to fire 3 at them today. Okay, so these are all All-Ireland Senior Hurling Final top scorers. So I want you to say, I'm going to give 3 years, and you have to give the top score, and you only get one guess. So it's one guess for each, and obviously you're not going back Googling or anything like that. I'm going to start with the 2021 All-Ireland Senior Hurling Final. Who was the top scorer?
Are you asking me now, or is this
I'm asking the viewers. You can write down yours as well, maybe, and have them in the back pocket. So the 2021 All-Ireland Senior Hurling Final, who was the top scorer? The 2008 All-Ireland Senior Hurling Final, who was the top scorer? And the 1994 All-Ireland Hurling Final, who was the top scorer. So 2021, 2008, and 1994. So the first thing is you have to know who contested the finals first, and then you have to go into 1994. Even caught me a bit off guard. I had to think about it. A couple of times before I got it. But it'd be interesting to see what the viewers say on that.
Okay, can I get my answers in now? You'd expect some people, like, you have to put the 3 answers in together. We'll wait until.
Yeah, no, you wait a minute. You wait a minute here, because I don't want to. I give the viewers a second. I appreciate. I think this one takes a lot longer than some of the other questions. Richard Hogan has in Hegarty, Shefflin, Damien Quigley. No,
I have, because I have Hegarty and Quigley. Is that right?
One is right.
So Hegarty is right.
No,
I was right with Quigley.
Yeah.
Okay. I have my.
I thought it was amazing, Shane, going back through the top scores, and this is a hint to everybody, how many top scorers were on the losing side.
That's okay.
And the 3 I've named were all on the losing sides.
Go away.
Yeah.
So it was Patrick Horgan.
Correct.
I had Eddie Brennan down. Didn't he score 2-4 against Watford that time? So obviously it was it Owen Kelly?
Yep.
That's mad.
And Damien Quigley, yeah.
So Damien Quigley is the only one I got right. That was the day of the flying flick into the net.
A beauty, yeah. An absolute beauty of it. But imagine, like, it's mad how many guys have finished top scorer in an All-Ireland final and not been on the winning side. It's crazy, really.
Yeah. That's mad stuff.
I just read out how much it was. Horgan got 12 in 2001. Owen Kelly got 1-9 in 2008. And Damien Quigley got 2-2 in 1994.
Yeah, we have plenty of guesses in here. I'm trying to see, did anyone actually get it right? Nobody seems to have got it right.
Nobody got Patrick Horgan by the looks of things.
No, it's not looking that way. Good questions.
Yeah, you want to try and pull the wool over people's eyes.
You're looking to sicken them, aren't you?
You want to sicken them is the right word, exactly.
Yeah, look, we'll put hurling out of those lads' heads for the next 10 years. Damon Quigley played Junior B hurling for Éire Óg in Cork a few years back, same club as Fintan O'Toole. Do you know Franny Ford won a Junior B with Turlough there recently, as far as I know? I think it was a Junior B.
Eddie Brennan won a Junior F or something, didn't he, with Greg Ballycallan there during in September, October, I think, at one stage as well. Kieran Carey still hurls Junior B.
Yeah, he sure does. Croke Park, not looking its absolute best, but there's been some amount of traffic on that pitch.
Yeah, but has there been too much traffic, Shane? It's great from a player's point of view. I think it's great to get to play provincial semi-finals in Croke Park, but is that the right? I don't know.
They're the problem. They are definitely the problem. All Ireland finals, of course, yeah, but semi-finals, come on. There's other pitches in the country.
I tell you what now, and I didn't actually get to see the games live yesterday, but I thought the pitch was bad on Saturday, and I thought, when a lad goes down with one hand and the ball just comes into his hand, he flicks, he's able to get under. That just wasn't happening on Saturday. I thought in both games, you had to be ultra careful. You had to really shorten your hurl. You had to get down. You nearly had to put 2 hands on it as well. And the
ball bounces quite dead on the Croke Park turf as well. So that's another little factor that makes it different from most pitches around Ireland. So when you have it kind of bobbly and it's kind of a dead bounce, I think it might take away from the quality in some way. In some ways, it's unbelievable, but in some ways, it's actually adding to the difficulty level. Yeah,
no, I'd agree with you. And there's obviously the biggest day in the club season is next Sunday as well. So of all the pitches they should be able to maybe turn it around quite quickly and get they have the lighting that they keep on it. And I think is there underfloor? Is there something there's not that in Croke Park. They don't have
underside heating.
Yeah, have they got that in Croke Park? I'm just thinking here off the top of my head. I think they have something rings a bell anyway. But it's not like a provincial ground or anything like that. That will get the best care possible for the next week. But pitch does.
Okay, I'm looking it up there. There is undersoil heating. It was turned on in 2018 when there was a cold snap. I'm just seeing that there. So there
had to be turned off recently because of energy costs, maybe.
Yeah. Okay. So what was the next topic? Oh yeah. So we obviously wanted to talk about Monaleen getting a brilliant win over Turin, and there's comments in about that. A word for Turin lads from Pa OK, when you get to the intermediate final, heartbroken for them, given 4 years coming up short. If they get over the line next year, it might be the sweetest victory for any team. James Daly, congratulations to Monaleen on winning the intermediate title. Savage achievement. I was in Park Urin yesterday, disappointed with the result, but delighted with new players and attitude of our lads. So what was your take on it?
I thought it was an absolute belter of a game, Shane, in the sense of just a real wholehearted battle. Turin obviously got off to a brilliant start. It's obviously Turin are made up of the bulk of the Mayo starting team, with the likes of Carl Freeman. Obviously Fergal Boland's been playing football the last couple of years, but like a seriously accomplished hurler. His brother Shane as well, obviously he's a very good player. Kenny Feeney could only come on at the end, which would have obviously been but it would have been a big loss to them. But like Turin really gave as good as they got for as long as they possibly could, and then at the end they just weren't able to convert a couple of chances. Whereas down the far end, like Marco Dwyer and it's Diarmuid O'Dollig, isn't it? Diarmuid O'Dollig, or is it Donegal O'Dollig? Diarmuid O'Dollig. Yeah.
The other lad is Diarmuid, so he must be Donegal.
Yeah, Donegal O'Dollig. So like every chance they got nearly was going over from ridiculous angles into the hill, like absolutely ridiculous angles. Whereas apart from a couple of Cottle Freeman points down the far end for Turin just couldn't get the ball over the bar when they really needed to.
The decision making at the end wasn't great, and I'm not saying it's easy to keep the head, but like a few of these shots and deliveries from all sorts of distances, they made it very difficult. And then when O'Dollig put over the final dagger, you knew it was curtains. But Turin had the chances, and they just forced shots that weren't on.
I thought there was a couple of long range frees that like they weren't going over. There was two definitely in the second half that kind of went tamely enough wide. I don't know, I'll be trying to play a ball in or something like that, maybe, or leave it in around the house, or maybe spray it to the corners. But the decision making when it mattered the most, just Turin's probably just wasn't up to scratch. But Jesus, they played their part in an absolute belter of a game. From a Monaleen point of view, it was interesting, great to see Ombrezlan coming down onto the sideline near the end of the game, and like he is all action on the line. He'd watched a good bit of the game from the stand, I think, and they made him put on a bib at one stage. They stopped play because he didn't have a bib on, and they made him put on a bib, and we saw him kind of, I don't know, remonstrating wouldn't be the word, or I don't know, was he apologizing to somebody after the game or something? Maybe he got a little bit too excited. He was looking for someone anyway. But an amazing turnaround for Monaleen in a year. Like this time last year, all that squad were in the middle of a big kind of a gym block that was organised basically by a hurling committee down in Monaleen to try and get them back up to senior and make sure that the next generation was going to be a fruitful one, because there's a lot of underage players coming through, and like they go through the Limerick Intermediate, they go through Munster, and then they end up winning All Ireland. I think the goal is to win, by all accounts, and they've been open enough about it, the goal is to win a senior title within the next 10 years. And if you look at the age profile of the players that they have, like Andrew Latouche Cosgrave is only, a pretty young man. He's 25 or 26. Marco Dwyer is young. O'Dollig is young. Larkin Lyons is not exactly old. He was on that Limerick squad in 2018. They were the better side coming down the stretch when it really, really mattered.
Yeah, I've heard people talk about Mungret as another team to really kick on in the next few years. So get your comments in. What team will really kick on in Limerick? It seems like every club is producing players at this stage.
Just Shane as well on Monaleen. Shawnee O'Donnell was working with them, the great stats man and whatever. And I had kind of mentioned in the show, but it was mentioned in the speech after that Paul Kinnerk had obviously done something with them, because it was mentioned by Larkin Lyons in the speech after. So like that is a fair caliber of individual to be calling on, like by all accounts, Ombrezlan. And I like that about a manager, I have to say, who's doesn't think he knows everything and is willing to get in other expertise that can offer another voice or whatever. But by all accounts, Shawnee O'Donnell has had a big influence in them, and that's yet another All-Ireland, yet another title to his what seems like an endless list of titles that he's been involved in the last 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, for those who are hiding under a rock and don't know, he's been involved with Limerick and Ballygunner as well. Ballygiblin had a brilliant win in the All-Ireland Junior final. They beat Easkey 116-11. So two teams from, I suppose, Connacht counties that wouldn't necessarily be expected to win hurling All-Irelands, both coming up a little bit short in the finals, but giving great efforts. And I saw that they're holding up a banner after the game This one's for you, Paddy. Obviously, Paddy Palmer, who passed away recently, iconic journalist down in Cork. But yeah, so a training pitch goal from Darren Flynn, really. Mark Keane behind the throw in for the breaking ball. James O'Sullivan, he was brilliant in the game. He got some great points. And there was a bit of a Hawkeye controversy as well.
Yeah, just on the Mark Keane thing, am I wrong in saying, you know the way the linesmen tend to come in on the pitch now to have everybody back? Is it the 65 or the 45 the players are supposed to be back at for the throw-in? The half back lines, half forward lines?
I think it has, well, some pitches the 65 is the midfield line. Yeah, so I'd say it's supposed to be behind the 45, yeah.
Yeah, I think they are, but like, so the officials would definitely not be happy with Mark Keane being behind the throw-in half a second after the ball was thrown in. And I think was it 9 seconds the ball ended up in the net? All of a sudden, it's like Owen Merchant's goal in the football final a couple of years ago. It's like I definitely think it was something that they practiced or thought that maybe could happen. And Mark Keane kind of said as much after. But that was a great start for Ballygiblin. In fairness, Easky came absolutely flying back into it. Andrew Kilcullen was brilliant up front. But there was a controversy with a free he took out the Hogan stand side that was given, but the Ballygiblin keeper had been waving it wide. Dara Flynn took a shot about 15 seconds later from the resultant puck out. The Hawkeye came up, but it didn't show the Dara Flynn effort. It showed Andrew Kilcullen's free, but people didn't realise they were showing Kilcullen's free. So for like another 20 minutes in the half, Easky had a point that had been taken off them. So I think in that sort of scenario, if that happened in, I'm not saying that this wasn't a big game, it obviously was, but that happened in an All-Ireland semi-final or final, I think you have to stop the play and explain to the sideline about what's after happening. Like, I was listening to it on TG Carter, and the lads didn't know, I think, until like a minute before half time. I think something like that, while the referee might know, I think something like that has to be conversed with someone and the information spread, because otherwise we end up with a situation. Hawkeye didn't do anything wrong. The information just wasn't, wasn't given back to people, so people were left in the dark. But Easky, like, having started poorly, made this a real battle. But again, it was a little more pronounced in the intermediate final. It was just a bit too much class from a Ballygiblin point of view. The centre forward was James O'Sullivan. He kept finding really good pockets of space coming out around the middle of the field, hit a couple of really good long range points. And his frees from distance were, superb as well. And I was going to tweet it at one stage. Is there a crossroads in Ballygiblin? Because they must have said Honda Crossroads about 50 times. And just on Paddy Palmer as well, there was a lovely tribute to him in Páirc Uí Rinn before that Munster League game yesterday. Obviously, such a huge personality and a much loved character around Cork.
Yeah, certainly. In the Walsh Cup, Westmeath beat Antrim by 15 points to 13 in Abbottstown, which I thought was an incredibly low scoreline, considering when I was watching some of the game back, it seemed like there was a bit of a crossfield win for sure, but other than that, it didn't seem too bad. Although it is a bit wide open in Abbottstown, so maybe that does explain it. It didn't seem to be particularly bad weather, and it's a good quality pitch. It's the first win of the year for Westmeath and Joe Fortune. They didn't have Killian Doyle either, which kind of adds to it a little bit. Albeit Antrim, they were weakened without having any Dunloy players, and there was a few others that weren't available as well. A little bit of a tasty game, a little bit feisty. Conall Bohill, he got sent off midway through the second half for what appeared to be a bit of a strikeout, and he was only on for 5 minutes, so obviously that didn't help their cause. Antrim again played Michael Bradley, who we've seen midfield and in the half-forward line. They played him wing-back. He had a score on the board after about 30 seconds, and I think it was 3 he had scored the week before against Dublin from the same position. Shane Clavin coming off injured early for Westmeath. He had started really well, like playing at number 6 and being able to get on the ball, and no matter what way it came to him, he was able to control it and deliver it up the field. Niall Mitchell and Owen Keys, they were the big men up top for Westmeath, who otherwise seemed to have a lot of nippy players around them. And then just after the game, Darren Gleeson said, he was talking about his own team and the wides and so on. He said the retention rate of the ball up front was shocking, and we conceded just 15 points. Had you told me coming down we concede that, you wouldn't think you're winning the game. But to score just 13 with a lot of chances is disappointing. There were a few good goal opportunities there as well, but wrong options taken and bad passes. We have a few weeks to straighten that out. but that is a disappointing performance, to say the least. Now, would you be overly bothered at this time of the year when you're missing so many players to score 13 points and only lose by 2?
13 is 13 is not a halftime tally in intercounty hurling at the moment. I do agree with you, what you say about Abbottstown can be a bit of a wind tunnel at times, and it can be a difficult kind of place to play. But yeah, it is a fairly kind of paltry tally. They're obviously missing a lot of players involved in the club final as well. It's hard to know because you just don't know what teams are doing at different this time of the year. You don't know what sort of training loads they're doing. You don't know if they're placing any stock in this. Like, there's not been smart. In the league, you can get relegated. In the Walsh Cup, it's just pre-season games. If you get to a final, it's a bonus. Do you know what I mean? And they're obviously, their strength and depth is going to be seriously tested this time of the year. And there's a lot of lads getting chances maybe that they wouldn't otherwise get if Dunley weren't in the final. So no, I wouldn't be reading too much into it, to be honest.
Yeah, I was at Galway's victory over Dublin at Parnell Park. It was 121 to 15 points. As I said earlier in the show, when both teams were playing into the church end, they were struggling because they were up against the hill and they were up against the wind as well. But Dublin, it was very frustrating to watch. Like, they've had such a player turnover, about 10 players gone from last year. And of course, Micheál Donoghue is doing his best to try and find new players. And as I go through the team, he has certainly got the makings of a nice group of new players coming. Like, Mark Grogan hasn't really been used by Dublin before. He was playing corner back and sometimes a little further away from goal, but mostly corner back. I thought he was very good for a guy who's always been centre back whenever I've seen him for Kilmacud Crokes in recent times. I thought Conor Donoghue and Paddy Doyle were both good at wing back. A few other players were a little bit disappointing. And, like, to be fair to Joe Flanagan, it was one of those days where he was playing centre forward. He was brilliant the last week against Antrim, but Galway completely choked up the centre forward area. He tried unbelievably hard. But, I heard in the meantime that he'd had, a tragedy with a close friend the day before and still played and tried his heart out. So huge credit to him. And it's one of those things that he hadn't told any of the players. He played on anyway, all the same. So fair play to him. Really tough. And, like, he hit the freeze brilliantly for the most part. A couple of them went awry towards the end of the game. But, fair dues to him for playing on such a difficult day for him personally.
Oh Jesus, yeah, like I can't imagine how tough that was. It's a great sign of a lad that he just kind of wanted to play and kind of get on with things, I suppose, as well. That's not to say that if you took it the other way and you didn't want to play, there's anything wrong with you or anything like that. But some people just the way they deal with things, I suppose, is just to get on with things. And he's obviously been one of the shining lights throughout the Walsh Cup. Yeah.
On the other side, like, Galway, and like, I'm seeing this a lot now, that teams would have 13 men in their own half and just leave 2 men close to the goal. And I think we're going to see more of that at both club and county level, and teams are going to completely choke up it's not the middle 8 anymore, is it? It's like the middle 20.
Yeah, it's gas you say that, because I was just kind of looking at the game yesterday, and basically that Oisin O'Reilly and Shane O'Brien were inside for Limerick. Kieran Joyce was trying to sit, but everybody else was out. Tom Morrissey was back in his own 21 at different stages. It was a Cormac Bosang and Brian Hayes were inside for Cork. Shane Barrett played probably a little bit closer to goal, but they generally had 12 back behind the ball, including the keeper. That's just the way it is now, isn't it? You try and choke up everything, turn over possession, and try and work it into not necessarily a shooter, a striker who can get a good ball inside yesterday. I was disappointed, actually, just from a Cork point of view as well. Some of the ball that went in was just not good enough, given the time that some of the lads had on the ball to give, maybe a more sympathetic ball into the forward.
Well, Dublin's problem was that they weren't getting the ball in at all. Now, there was a few balls delivered straight up the line, and it can be difficult, depending on how much pressure you're under, if you're a half back, to deliver cross field a nice ball in front of one of your inside forwards. But there was a few that went up the line, and again, I was getting frustrated with lads trying to touch the ball down on the hurley rather than just catch the thing, because obviously they give the defender more time to get a tackle in on him, or at least jostle them. And when it's soft underfoot, it makes it more difficult as the forward to then get away. Keane O'Sullivan came on, hit a couple of points. He did all right. AJ Murphy had to go off injured early. He had started quite well. Alex Considine was very good in the first half. He just turned and went at Galway every time. But it was one of those things, there's no way he was taken off at half-time because he wasn't playing well. So maybe it was one of those things that were just easing him back in with Dublin, or maybe he's picked up a knock, but I didn't see him picking up any sort of a knock. On the Galway side of things, Derek Fahey made a brilliant save in the first half. He did all right. Tiernan Killeen was good at wing back. Ronan Murphy from Tommy Larkins, he scored 3 from midfield. The forward line, for a lot of the game, I was thinking, they're not winning any ball. It's not sticking up front, but ultimately they did pull away. Brian Kincannon did a couple of nice things. Tom Monaghan came on and got a couple of points. But one of the things that stood out is that at one stage, Jason Flynn was trying to solo through the Dublin defence. And I don't think he didn't see it coming probably until the very last second. He was just coming in towards the penalty area and he got murdered with a shoulder from Eoin O'Donnell. It was a huge hit. The two of them went flying. But yeah, Flynn needed a small bit of treatment after it. Now, fair play to him, he did get up. But you and I would both enjoy watching something like that now, wouldn't we? Rather than a nice score, we want to see a big hit.
Well, it's like this. A nice score is great, but like I love seeing the pressure and you love seeing the lad. Like O'Donnell has a fair highlight reel of big hits. Remember him against, was it Limerick in a league semi-final in Nolan Park? Could have been Matty's first year maybe. Came out and, a couple of monster hits that day as well. Just hugely physical player. I enjoy that part. That's my defensive instincts. I enjoy that part of the game. I no problem in saying I take a hook over a goal most days of the week, to be honest with you. Just because I don't know that a hook or a block, yeah, and particularly a goal saving hook or a goal saving block. Give me them any day of the week over a goal.
Yeah, there's too many lads gone from Dublin for Donoghue to get the bounce he was hoping for, says ML89. If he came in 2 to 3 years ago, it could have been a very good combo, but those lads gone and a few wasted years for Dublin. Who's actually gone from the Dublin panel this year? I know about Cromie O'Callaghan, Rush and McBride. Also, Mark Shuta is not there. There's a couple of others just off the top of my head I can't remember, but yeah, there's plenty of them gone. Yes, Shane, if the ball is in the catching zone, i.e. anywhere you can grab it, you should grab it. A touch on the hurl, no matter how silky your touch might be, can give your opponent a chance to dispossess. Now, the vast majority of the time, a player will get away with it, but it'll just be a couple of times in a game, your team does it, and you lose the ball because of it. And it's so frustrating to watch if you were trying to make sure that your team just does secure possession. Just needless little touches. And they're like, most players are like, geez, what's the problem? Sure, I'm well able to do that. You are, but it's just the one time that it'll cost the team, or that the other team will be able to get back in and get a tackle because you took the unnecessary touch. That's what I'm talking about. It's not always very obvious why a manager would go nuts about it, but I do think it's important.
I remember marking Richie Hogan one time and I just couldn't believe how good he was at catching a ball that was literally half a foot off the ground. He wouldn't even put his hurl to it. And then you're gone. Like what do you, like, he's taken any element of doubt out of the game or any element of chance for you. So the second you have the ball in your hand, you get the aim of the game is to get the ball in your hand as quick as possible. You're in complete control then. You can scan, you can do whatever you want. And I think it's just a woeful habit that people have gotten into. Woeful habit. But just as quick as possible, ball in hand, move on, try and create something.
Yeah, Galway's bench was very good the other day. A couple of the new lads did quite well. I've already kind of listed them, but one or two probably won't see that much action when it comes to the big stuff later in the year. Wexford beat your Offaly. I had a chance to watch some of this. Both teams coming in off a loss. A good victory for Wexford. I think it was tight for long spells, and Offaly, I think they went 3-1 down and then scored 3 points to 1 down and then went 1-3 to 3 ahead. Really good goal from Bushy and Kelly. And a player I thought stood out quite a lot early in the game was Charlie Mitchell. He'd scored a point off either side and then he set up that goal. How good can he be?
He's a good player, Shane. Yeah, he's about a year older than that kind of golden Kilcormac Kilotty generation that's coming through. But he's very, very good player. He was good against Kilkenny the week before. Got a lovely point from distance and was unlucky with one just after. I think he had 3 points. Got fairly early yesterday. But then, a lad's on fire and then you can't get him the ball or you can't get him good ball. Like he's probably only 18, 19. The ball coming in needs to be in his favour, because whoever you're marking is going to be physically a good bit bigger than you. That's just kind of natural when you're coming in at that age. But he's definitely a bright spark. The scoreline probably flatters us a small bit.
Really?
Just a small bit. I think we outscored Wexford 1-4 to 2 points in the closing stages, despite being down to 14 men, which is surprising from a Wexford point of view because they had Lee Chin on the pitch. He came in and made an instant impact. And Darragh Egan was just talking about how important it is to have that sort of X factor and trying to keep him fit. Like He didn't play much league last year. Remember, he had that hamstring problem. I think he probably exceeded expectations in the championship and ended up with an all-star nomination, given that he was struggling for large parts of the season. So keeping him fit is going to be hugely important. But I think David Nally got a right good free, had a good bit of topspin on it from just inside the Wexford 45, kind of pulled us back into it. But from my point of view, been within four of Kilkenny, been within a score of Wexford. That's heartening enough. Now we're still a bit off it. And even I was chatting to someone that was at the game yesterday, and even in the warm-ups, they were saying just a shooting drill that Wexford are doing, everybody was stepping into the ball because everything was 100 miles an hour at Liam McCarthy level, and we were doing a similar-ish kind of a drill, and just a little bit more ponderous and taking that touch and thinking you have time. You just don't have time. Jeez, I was looking at at some of the instances in the Cork and Limerick game yesterday. If your first touch is not on, God, it's like Shane, it's like there's 5 yards, right? And you take a touch, it's not in your hand, and it's just like, boom, everybody's in on top of you. It's amazing, even when the ball is around your feet as well. You get one chance and one chance only to get the ball in your hand. If it's not in your hand, 10 seconds later, it could be down the far end of the pitch. It's just, you have to be, a lot of it is concentration as well, but your touch has to be so on point nowadays in inter-county hurling. It's going to take us a while to get there, but as I said, heartening enough to be close to these teams in these games. And these are the highest caliber teams we're going to be playing this year, because we're going to be playing Division 2A hurling and Joe McDonagh hurling, which are both really competitive, but these games are priceless at this stage of the year.
And one final thing in terms of getting the ball in your hand. If you're a player, would you rather spend an extra half second having to control the ball, or having that extra half second to take a look up? Because that's what it'll give you the option, or that's what it'll allow you to do. And that half second might allow you to dodge a tackle, might allow you to see you're out in terms of who the pass is. That's why it's so important. And it's something that, when you're a young lad and you're playing yourself, or there's plenty of young girls out there as well. Like, it's something you have to appreciate, but you won't when you're young. It's only maybe when you're a little bit older, if someone does actually get through to you, that you realize the value of it. Wouldn't you love
to, all the lessons that you learn, and, we're knocking on now, unfortunately, and our time is gone, but as players, shall we say, but wouldn't you love to have all those lessons? Why do you always have to make all the mistakes and do all the things wrong, and then a couple of years near the end of your career, it's like the penny has dropped and you realize you should be doing X, Y, and Z. That's why I just have so much nearly bewilderment looking at someone like David Clifford, who seems to just have the wisest head on a pair of really, really young shoulders. But as you say there, having the ball in your hand that half second earlier, just so many more options. But it's almost like now there's a bit of a panic. It's like sometimes with the touch, it's like players are converging, and that little bit of pressure maybe puts your touch off as well.
Yeah, Martin Furlong, what about a potential Chin, MacDonald, O'Connor full forward line? I think Egan might be looking into it. Now, Rory O'Connor, are you talking about Jack O'Connor, who's obviously got a good hand in him, or are you talking about Rory, Martin? Let us know there. I presume you're talking about Rory because of his pace inside. I don't think he's all that far away. He's been making great progress, according to Darragh Egan. We're talking about the knee injury he had last year against Clare, and I think he injured it again when playing for St. Martin's. But I think Ross Banville, in terms of being a free taking option, he showed up again yesterday, so he might be an option there. Before the match, Darragh Egan, he was talking about Limerick, and he was talking about how you need a 60% return on scoring efficiency. And he had said, we had 40 shots last week, we scored 18 points. Laois had 30 shots and scored 20. But I mean, some of that comes back to getting the head up and just giving the ball to somebody who's in a better position. Because like Wexford over the last few years, a bit like Tip as well, the shots from 100 yards, and Clare again, the All-Ireland semi-final last year, teams who have a load of shots from 100 yards tend to be the teams that don't win games, especially when they're up against the best sides.
They're lower percentage shots. There's no point in saying any different. No matter how good of a ball striker you are, they're just much lower percentage shots. That's why anything inside the 65, and probably if you're thinking about the poster here, probably the width of the post out from the post, if you get me. Again, that there's an area there. It's almost like within football, it's anything inside the D or whatever. But within, there's such a high percentage of shots go over within. There's some chances that go begging within those scoring areas. It's criminal to miss within those areas, but it's also criminal to be taking shots from 100 yards and be expecting them to go over. That's why I know that you want Tipperary to work the ball up the field for the halfbacks, generally, unless they're on the front foot, to put a ball into the forward, because the percentage chance of you scoring if the forward gets a decent touch or it's a ball in, a good ball in, he's a much better chance of scoring. And they're not being smart with you. Nearly every lad that's up in the forwards is up there for a reason, because they're a killer in front of the goals. And there's a reason why most lads are in the half back line or in the full back line, because they're not a killer in front of the goals.
A reminder, we're brought to you by orgaretro.com. Use the promo code OurGame and you'll get 15% off. There's so many brilliant items you can get there, whether you want a zip-up top, a retro jersey, or something that's as retro as it comes, like the two tops we're wearing, that Dublin one or this Wexford one here. They're absolutely class. Imagine throwing a pair of jeans on with these, or obviously bootcut jeans. Although bootcut jeans are coming back, aren't they? I was going to say in your case bootcut jeans, but of course they're coming back now. The youngsters are wearing them these days, aren't they?
Big fan of the flares back in the day now.
Oh, I've no doubt you were. With the dewberries underneath, no doubt.
And the bottom of the jeans cut on either side just to leave a little bit of a flap hanging out.
Yeah, it looked well, didn't it?
Oh, yeah. It's mad to think like what we were wearing back in the day. I always go back to that when all the Dubs were suspended that time for the O'Byrne Cup and they were all standing on the hill, like, and you just see the fashion on show.
Another thing is I used to have, like, do people remember this brand called Rode? So they used to do like jeans and like corduroy. So I used to have big baggy corduroys, Rhodes. Oh, scandalous enough. And obviously the hair was fairly spiked in all directions as well. So you can imagine how that looked. Kilkenny beat Laois 331 to 221. Oh, by the way, sorry, just to finish off on Wexford. They had goal chances early on, didn't really finish them as well. They're going to play Kilkenny or Galway in the final. Galway are in the final of the Walsh Cup, and if Wexford beat Kilkenny next week, then they'll be through with them as well. 12,000 tickets already sold for Kilkenny against Wexford next week, which is incredible. So Kilkenny beat Laois 331 to 221, so 13 points to spare there. That was at Rathdowney. Big crowd there as well. Billy Drennan, he scored a goal, and actually 2 goals, and then the other one was from Grode Dunn, who hit 1-2. I'd say Derek Ling will be very happy to see a couple of the players that he had with the All-Ireland under-20 side kicking on straight away.
Oh, without a doubt. Billy Drennan got 2-4 yesterday. I think it was 2-2 from play. He was very good early on against Offaly the week before. Garrod Dunn 1-2. Lots of new faces. That impressed against Offaly, putting up their hand again. If I just fire through some of the scores really quickly, did a really good spread of scores as well. Billy Drennan 2-4, Garrod Dunn 1-2. John Donnelly, Walter Walsh got 4 each. Alan Murphy got 3. Keane Kenny, Niall Brennan got 3 points each. David Blanchfield 2. Paddy Deegan and Ian Byrne got a point apiece as well. From a Laois point of view, PJ Scully hit 8. I think he got 5 place ball or 5 frees and 2 sideline cuts as well. Ryan Malani put 3 over, and Ross King and Stephen Bergen got the goals. But comprehensive enough from Kilkenny. A little bit more of an experienced look to their side. Pádraig Walsh was in at wing back. He came on the last day, not long back from honeymoon. But I'd say it's a case of he's back playing in a position he hadn't played in a couple of years. Wasn't really a guaranteed starter for long stages last year. So although he is a lot proved, he probably has a little bit to prove to a new manager, if that makes sense, or he wants to, be there as much as he can and really push on and probably hit the ground running after a kind of a frustrating season last year.
Yeah, so Laois were ahead for good spells of that early in the game. So I think that in itself is very encouraging. Like, so if you look at Laois and Offaly here, to be as competitive as they're being compared with like previous years, and maybe the bar is a little bit higher for Laois in more recent times anyway, but I still think it's a very good sign that they're going ahead, and I'm sure Willie Maher would be quite encouraged from that. In the Keogh Cup, Kildare beat Wicklow by the minimum. That was 15 points to 111, so very low scoring there, whereas Carlow beat down 125 to 120. Now, in football, Patrick McBrearty, he's going to take over as Dublin football captain for 2023. Like, he's been on the road for so long at this stage, and he's still not overly old or anything like that. He's probably 28 or 29, is he?
Yeah, I think you said he was taking over as Dublin captain.
Right. He's 29.
Yeah,
Donegal captain, sorry.
Donegal, obviously. And at 29, I can't think of a more experienced player, someone who's been around as long as he is. He made his debut, he played minor and senior the one day. I think they beat Antrim in the senior in 2011. So this is going to be his 13th season. If I'm being honest, I'm a tad surprised. I didn't think he looked on his game maybe last year. but maybe he's obviously brought a fresh approach to it maybe this year, and Paddy Carr has seen captaincy material in him. But it's going to be interesting to see. A lot of lads are going. It's not one person, but a lot of people are going to have to pick up that mantle that Michael Murphy left and try and drive Donegal forward. So the results in the McKenna Cup probably haven't been, that encouraging, but I think you'd prefer a bit of short-term pain in the preseason competition and survive in Division 1. I think that'll be Paddy Carr's goal for the league, really, will be to survive in Division 1 and try and get a bit of a run going in Ulster then after.
Yeah, so a couple of other bits of news in football. Peter Cook's going to return to the Galway senior football squad, so that's a boost to them to have that bit more quality around the middle sector of the field. Laois and DCU footballer Ross Bulger, he's over on trials in America as a place kicker for an American football college team. Very exciting as well. Let me just check. I'll bring his tweet up on screen here as well if I can. Sorry, I just had.
That's an unbelievable one. We've all been on trials for various teams and stuff like that, but this is a different type of trial. There's fair pressure involved here.
Yeah, the support I've received on social media and in person recently has been mind-blowing. I can't thank everyone enough as I start this exciting new journey. Huge shout out to Leader Kicking, so that's Tig Leader, who made the stream possible, and Brendan Cahill for his guidance as well. So that was just tweeted, I think, 3 days ago now. So fair play to him there, and hopefully that'll go very well. Let's see, next piece of thing to be talking about. Pádraig O'Hora chopped off his hair the other day for Laura Lynn Hospice, so that was brilliant stuff. We had that up on the channel. On
some man, isn't he? I said in one of the shows, like, he is definitely one of the most likable GA players out there at the moment. He's just very kind of real, isn't he?
Yeah, he is. Offaly withdrawn from the old Byrne Cup. What did you make of that?
I was surprised that they actually did. It's funny, Shane, when I saw the result against Dublin, you're thinking, oh, great, brilliant win against Dublin. Well, not been smart. It's probably the one game they didn't want to win. They would have just been happy to get that game under their belt and not have to even think about another fixture for a couple of days, rest the bodies and whatever. But listen, it's just too congested. It was kind of player welfare was what they said. But it kind of makes a bit of a farce of the competition, with walkovers being given. A team that's been in a semi-final, like, I've never seen a team pull out of a competition before, really, that was in a semi-final. Usually you want to be in that position. It's like the one competition where you want to play your games, which almost some counties don't want to progress. They want to,
like the league. People don't want to get to finals in the league. People often talk about, but the other thing is, we've had a statement from the GA since, in terms of, maybe looking at teams have to fulfill those fixtures. Obviously Louth opted out of one, and then obviously, but I think if Offaly didn't make this stand, the issue might lumber on for another year. Like about that time, remember the time that Donegal said that maybe Dublin shouldn't have 2 games at Croke Park for the Super 8s, for example. Unless somebody sticks their head up and says it, these things will continue on, and there'll be an unfair advantage for a team. Like Offaly were going to have 3 games in the space of a week. That obviously isn't ideal,
Yeah, and travel involved in 2 of them as well, which makes it even more taxing. And listen, I'd say there's a good few Sigerson managers that are happy that they pulled the plug as well. And that's such a balancing act for, like, Liam Kearns is a new manager. In fairness to Liam said what he said on Wednesday night about 3 or 4 days before that as well. And then he said it on Wednesday, got a lot of traction, and then they followed through on it. Like, we're back in Division 3 of the league. Our fortunes, or how we get on the league, could have depended on 2 lads that picked up a calf and a hamstring knock in this game that meant they missed the first 2. Do you know what I mean? Like, so you have to kind of see the bigger picture. And I'd say the players were pretty happy that they were able to rest the bodies, go and do maybe a good session Saturday or Sunday. And this is the thing about pre-season competitions as well. Once you sign up, you generally have to play the games. They're official fixtures. Whereas, if you have 2 or 3, you can organise league games in your own time and you're in control of it. But they're kind of not in control of this, of these kind of competitions, and generally have to fulfil the fixtures. But I think something will happen as a result of this, and some sort of change will be made. I think they were talking about making the O'Byrne Cup knockout next year, which would mean that it's obviously going to be less games, but it's a bit more controllable, shall we say, for those involved and even for the winning teams.
Yeah, there's plenty of counties there at the moment that are operating in these pre-season competitions, but they'll have a second panel playing as well the same day, and just give different mixes of players game time. The other thing is, I'd love to see I'd love to see it just being made a college month, so that we have like just college games on TV all month and being talked about all month, and players aren't being pulled from Billy to Jack. They don't ever really get to, like, college managers never really get their full panel together. And how much better would the Fitzgibbon be and the Sigerson be, and all the tiers beneath that and the younger age groups, if they actually had a chance to prepare?
Well, Jack Glynn said as much last week, didn't he? That he basically didn't get a chance to really train with David Clifford last year. But again, as well as that, Shane, I said something on last week's show, and I probably didn't maybe explain it that well. You know what I was saying about there been too many games going on? Like, it's just, the Sigerson and the Fitzgibbon deserves its own attention. It doesn't deserve having a load of things pulling out of it, if you get me. And the county scene is totally dragging out of it. It's actually making it difficult for lads now. It was always tricky, but it's making it really difficult, and I'd say it's making it like it's not nearly as enjoyable for the players involved now, because they're walking this tightrope between their club manager or their college manager and their county manager, and the prospect of getting injured. And it's all fine playing the games, but if they get an injury, then all of a sudden, like, we've all seen it. You've been nearly blacklisted by your manager. I told you I didn't want you to play that game. I told you I didn't want you to do that session or whatever. And that's, to me, that's not the spirit of the GA, and it's not the spirit of competition either.
Yeah. Okay. So in the intermediate All-Ireland football final, Rathmore of Kerry beat Galbally. So Shane Ryan, the county goalkeeper for Kerry, he was excellent. He scored 1-3. And I suppose another brilliant victory and brilliant day for Kerry. Should we talk about the fact that Kerry have 8 teams in the different tiers in their championship, and the fact that divisional teams make up some of that top tier as well, which means that in terms of actual clubs, are Rathmore really the 9th best team in Kerry? Or if you were to just go club teams alone, are they a fully senior team? Like, should there be a minimum of 12 senior teams, leaving out divisional teams, in the top tier of any senior championship?
Well, I know they're even talking about that in Kerry now as well, because Paul Murphy was chatting last week about how difficult it will be for them to survive at senior level. Like, it's so cutthroat, and Sack's been relegated, obviously, is, as cutthroat as you get. But yeah, I think the Kerry have had a distinct advantage, probably same as Kilkenny, but Kilkenny do have 12 teams at senior in hurling. You know what I mean? So, but there's definitely some like Tipperary are at a disadvantage. I would say Offaly were at an advantage when they had 8 senior teams and the 9th team was going into the Leinster Intermediate. Some teams are at an advantage and some are at a disadvantage. So that playing field probably needs to be levelled. And it's funny, I think if you go back through all of Foss's games, tightest game was the county final, am I right in saying? The one that went to the extra time as well. By far their tightest game, I think, the whole way through the journey. And interesting for Rathmore as well, Fossa were still out in the field celebrating when Rathmore, when they were getting ready to come out, and they gave him a guard of honour out onto the pitch, which is remarkable. I've never seen anything like that happen, where a victorious team basically welcomes on. If you look at the front there, Shane, the cup is actually at the very front of the picture on the right hand side. One of the lads has the cup in his hand, and there's a snapper at the end of the left there, getting a good pick from that side as well. But it's a bit of a mad one. And from an East Kerry point of view, Rathmore winning Kerry obviously has a knock-on effect. Rathmore are senior now, so they won't be playing with East Kerry. Shane Ryan and co will not be playing with East Kerry. And if the Cliffords keep winning in Kerry, they will not soon enough, they'll no longer be playing with East Kerry either. But just I thought it was an interesting story, Shane. I mentioned on the show the last day. So my colleague in the Independent, Donncha Boyle, just had it in his report today. It was a tale of 2 goalkeepers that shaped the All-Ireland final. So in goals for Rathmore was 44-year-old Kenneth O'Keefe. So that's Declan O'Keefe's younger brother that used to play with Kerry 27 years after he played in Croke Park as the Kerry minor goalkeeper. So 44 years young, made a couple of great saves as well. And then obviously you had Shane Ryan, the goalkeeper, turned forward at the other end of the field, who had a huge influence in proceedings as well. But I love that when you know a guy can do it outfield, and even if Kenneth O'Keefe is 44, if you have it, you have it. And you let him do his thing in goals and let the other lad do it outfield.
Yeah, for sure. We'll go through some of the other preseason results in the Connacht FBD semi-final. semi-finals. Roscommon beat Sligo 3-17 to 2-13. So a good win and start for Davy Burke when it comes to competitive action there. That was an entertaining game indoors at the Air Dome in Bacon. So 3-17 to 2-13. Yeah, it would have to be in the Air Dome, I'd say, to get up that sort of score in there. Keith Doyle, he scored 2-2. Dermot Murtaugh scored 5 points. Plenty of other lads getting in on the score too, like Ben O'Carroll with 1-2. Patrick O'Connor top scored for Sligo with 1-3 and Sean Carabine with 1-2. They're going to meet Mayo, who beat Galway. That was 2-18 to 3-12. So I wouldn't say either manager is overly worried about this. It was pretty experimental lineups there. So that's the story in that competition.
Can I just ask you really quickly, Shane, and I know we're not going to dwell on too much. Can Mayo do anything this year, like really significant, without Oisin Mullen and without Lee Keegan?
It's hard to make a case for it, isn't it? I wouldn't rule them out winning Connacht. I mean, you'd have to make Galway the favourites there. But I wouldn't rule it out. But it's just when they come up against Kerry and Dublin later in the year, not having Mullen, not having Keegan, will Ryan O'Donoghue, Tommy Conroy and Killian O'Connor, will they all be absolutely flying this year? Will the likes of McLaughlin be flying? You know, maybe they all will. But I don't know. It's hard to make a case for an All-Ireland tilt.
I think it's fascinating in Connacht this year. So Galway have to back up what they did last year. They've Peter Cook back on board. They've Ian Burke and Manny Moore. They were 4 points off Kerry in the All-Ireland final. Had themselves in a really good position. Up north. Then you're looking at hopefully Tyrone will bounce back. Can Derry back up what they did in Ulster? What sort of a hop will Paddy Carr get out of Donegal? Same question for Vinnie Corey and Monaghan. The Dubs in Leinster. Kerry down in Munster. There's a lot. I think there's a potential for it to be one of the best championships in a long, long time. And we said that last year. We probably said it the year before as well. So things seem to have leveled off a good bit. And there's a lot of teams. Galway put their head up last year. They could put their head up a bit more again this year. And if they do, they won't be far off.
So in the McGrath Cup, Colin McSweeney's point 6 minutes into injury time earned Limerick a draw, and with Tipperary, and that secured their place in the McGrath Cup final.
Did you see the conditions?
Not great.
Started off lovely, absolutely descended into farce near the end. The goal was got in some of the worst conditions I've ever seen, and it was played in an all-weather pitch, so it should never look as bad in an all-weather pitch as it would on a standard pitch, because you see the muck and you see everything and there's surface water. But like, oh my God, it was ropey now. Very, very ropey.
And you know, when you talk about a match and you say, and you can see it was in the muck, you can't help but think of the rest of the sentence, the muck and the SH1T, can you?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Yeah. Cork beat Clare 2-10 to 8 points, so Cork are in the final also. Stephen Sherlock scored 1-6 there. And
Fintan O'Connor kept saying Cork are going for the January double. My God, they'd hang their hat on anything. So they're going for the McGrath Cup and the Munster Hurling League double now.
Yeah. So Richard Hogan says Down are my dark horses for Ulster. I think a few people are looking at them and wondering what can Conor Laverty do this year with them. Tyrone beat Cavan in the McKenna Cup semi-final. Tyrone loved this competition as much as Roscommon loved the FBD. And Derry saw off Down 3-2 on penalties. And afterwards, Rory Gallagher said, penalties are in now in football, whether they're right or wrong. I still feel next score wins is the easiest solution for everybody. It's not going to go 20 minutes without a next score, no matter how defensive teams are. And also, obviously, after the pain of losing to Galway on penalties last year, you know, if anyone is to be able to speak passionately about that, it's surely Gallagher.
Yeah, and sure, even Pádraig Joyce said after that All-Ireland quarter-final, he hates penalties, hates the idea of it. I love the drama of it, but I just think it's an awful way to lose. I think you should lose a game by a score. That's just my own opinion. I just think you should have, I'm
loving it.
I know you are. I think you should have to win a game rather than the other team losing it, if that makes sense. I'd like to see it finish 15-15 and someone gets a score.
Yeah. Are you both doing the fantasy hurling? Will there be any tips? I'm sure we will do it, but we'll get a league and a code and all that kind of crack set up and shared in the coming weeks. Who are you referring to here now, A Sully 180? They haven't a hope in Munster League. Oh yeah, sure, Tip are back, aren't they? Come on, Vernie, if we win the Munster Hurling League next weekend, are you going to admit that Tip are back?
Tip are back in the Munster Hurling League final.
Hey, do you know what we haven't done? The old thing that we haven't prepared for?
Oh my God.
The week. We refuse to prepare for this because who are you going to give the football one to? I'm giving it to Paddy Clifford.
Yeah, do you know what?
Paddy now.
Paddy was brilliant, and that point he got off his left was it was an unbelievable score. In fairness, I'm going to give it to Shane Ryan. I don't know many goalkeepers, Niall Morgan, and to a lesser extent Rory Beggan aside, that can do what he does, both in the goals and up front. It's phenomenal. It's been he has all the medals. Am I right in saying he has all the medals that David Clifford has as well, except he has intermediate County Kerry, intermediate Munster, and All Ireland intermediate as well. Fair going.
He doesn't have Footballer of the Year.
Medals, I said.
Yeah. Well, yeah, okay. And who are you giving it to for hurling? Do you know what, actually? I'm struggling to pick one there. And the reason, I was thinking of the Galway-Dublin game over the weekend, and we had to pick man of the match at the end, and I couldn't pick anyone. I don't know, they're quite attritional games at the moment.
Yeah, I actually gave Richie English man of the match in the Limerick Cork game yesterday because I thought he was outstanding. Fergal Boland deserves a mention for Turin, particularly when the light was dying for them near the end. I thought he was brilliant. But I'm going to give it to their red-headed corner forward, Diarmuid O'Dalig.
Let's give it to him. Yeah, absolutely. Let's give it to him. A couple of more comments before we finish up here. Penalties are a penalty for not finishing off the game in normal time. Gallagher's Derry didn't lose to Galway on penalties, Shane. What? Oh, that was Armagh. Sorry, I got that wrong. I mixed it up. Sub 2 years ago, great show. Donncha O'Dalig, 5 points from playing in All-Ireland final in one half. Yeah, so that was a big faux pas that I said it was Rory Gallagher's team. It was, of course, Kieran McGeeney's team.
I'm just going to, for the record here, Donncha O'Dalig, and I'd like to apologise to Donncha because I think I called him Diarmuid. It's Donncha O'Dalig, and that should be a name that we should remember because it's probably going to be on our lips for a while now, I'd say.
Yeah, but the big problem is Diarmuid O'Dooling came up in the same weekend as well. So, we were lambs to the slaughter with that. Okay, that's it for the show today. We'll see you all again on Thursday. We'll have plenty more to chat about.
Cheers, Shano.